mixing, and in-depth look. Most cakes share the same 5 basic ingredients. It's the way those ingredients are combined that makes all the difference in the style and crumb of the final product. Here we'll take a closer look at the major cake mixing methods. Creaming. If you know just one mixing method by name, it's likely the creaming method. For more information, click here. Creaming is a fundamental technique that helps cakes rise. The tiny pockets of air created during the process get filled by the leavener in the recipe. As with this lemon bundt cake below, it creates a fluffy crumb and a cake with good height. The result? Fluffy, somewhat open crumb, tall rise. Good for bundt cakes, everyday cakes, some layer cakes. Creaming versus reverse creaming. One technique isn't better than the other, but each results in a unique texture and shape. A creamed cake will have a higher rise with a domed top. A cake made with reverse creaming will have a flat top and a finer crumb, perfect for stacking and frosting. Reverse creaming while creaming butter and sugar is probably the most common first mixing step in the world of baking. We don't use this method all that much for layer cakes. When we want a tender but sturdy cake with an ultra-fine, downy crumb, we turn to reverse creaming. This process starts with combining all of the dry ingredients, after which softened butter is incorporated, followed by any liquid ingredients. During reverse creaming, the butter coats the flour particles, therefore minimizing gluten development for a tender, fine crumb. Just as important, since the butter isn't beaten with sugar, less air is incorporated, which translates to less rise and a sturdier cake, perfect for the classic white layer cake below that needs to be stacked and frosted. The result: ultra-tender but sturdy structure, resists crumbling, fine, velvety crumb, even rise. Whipped whites. Whipped egg whites are often thought of as another form of leavening, and this is basically true. Many cakes, like the following angel food cake, gain impressive height and lightness from whipped whites. But it's not the egg itself that grows the cake, it's air. As egg whites are whipped, their proteins loosen and stretch, capturing and trapping air inside a fluffy foam that gives cakes lift. The whipped whites are then gently added to a batter made from flour and liquids. Sometimes melted fat is added. The result: light texture, airy, springy crumb. Good for angel food cakes, jelly roll cakes, some pound-style cakes. Adding sugar to whipped whites. Often sugar is added to egg whites partway through the whipping process. The sugar dissolves in the water from the whites to form a viscous liquid that helps stabilize the structure. If the sugar is added too early, it interferes with the egg protein's ability to unfold for a weaker network that supports only small air bubbles. If added too late, it draws water from the foam and causes its structure to weaken. Gradually add sugar according to the visual of the recipe. Usually, for ideal volume and stability, you'll want to add the sugar after the whites have started to get foamy, but well before they form peaks. Incorporating whipped whites. After carefully whipping your egg whites to just the right point, you don't want them to deflate upon being incorporated into the batter. Most often we take the following precaution: combine, essentially deflating, a third of the whipped whites with the batter to lighten it and then carefully fold in the remaining whites with a rubber spatula. Lightening the batter ensures the whites won't collapse under its weight. Ribboning. When you think of whipping eggs, you probably think of just the whites. But whipping whole eggs with sugar until they double in volume is another mixing method that can act as leavener for a cake that's incredibly light, though not as whisper light as one leavened with egg whites alone, yet still rich in flavor. We use this method for the pictured sponge cake for our refined strawberry shortcake. The term ribboning refers to the ribbon-like strands that form between the whisk and batter when the eggs and sugar are whipped. The result? Light and fluffy but substantial texture, rich flavor. Good for Genoise cake, sponge cakes that require the structure to stand up to a filling, chocolate cakes that need help with lift. Heating it up. Sometimes the eggs and sugar are heated together before whipping. This ensures that all of the sugar dissolves, which makes for a more viscous mixture. And the more viscous a liquid, the slower the water escapes. This leads to a more stable foam and, in turn, a loftier, sturdier cake. The quick bread method. This method is the easiest of all the mixing methods. First, the dry ingredients, flour, baking powder and/or baking soda, and salt, are whisked together in one bowl. Next, the wet ingredients, milk or buttermilk, melted butter or oil, sugar, and eggs, are whisked in another bowl or a liquid measuring cup. Finally, the wet ingredients are stirred into the dry ingredients until just combined to avoid overmixing. Despite the fact that melted butter, or oil, eggs, and sugar have a great tenderizing effect, overmixing will yield tough results. This technique doesn't introduce extra air into the batter, and the result is a cake with a rustic crumb. This mixing method virtually eliminates doming and makes for a sturdy cake that can support a topping like the one on this apple upside-down cake. The result: coarse crumb, sturdy structure. Good for upside-down cake snack cakes.